This is East Meets West. You know him as the host of the podcast talking politics and religion without killing each other. And the second most important man to hail from Freehold, New Jersey, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Corey Nathan.
And he is the 7-time Emmy-winning broadcast journalist, born and raised in beautiful Los Angeles, Rick Garcia. And I'm glad you emphasized without killing each other, because you know when that's important, it's when you want to kill somebody. And yeah. I don't know if you can tell by my beaten up hat, but I at the very least I want to beat somebody up, if not kill somebody.
It's a rough time for you, isn't it? I mean, let's be honest for a second here, if we can.
When you die hard, you got to die hard, man. You got to love them in good times and bad. And
yeah,
what's beyond?
I'm
bad?
with you.
Do you
I'm
still
the
love
same
them
way.
It's beyond bad.
Yep, that is love, right? And that's the way it should be. Let's dive right into these NBA playoffs. I'm going to start with the expectations, right? I mean, Oklahoma City swept the Suns, so they're going to move on and be feasting on whoever their next opponent is. The Spurs probably going to close out to Portland, so that's not a huge surprise there. Boston with a 3-1 series lead on the 76ers. Those who we expected, and I want you to dive in and put in your 2 cents on all of them, but let me just break them down in that regard. Surprises now. Surprises. I think the Lakers almost sweeping the Rockets is a surprise. I think Minnesota having a lead on Denver is a surprise, especially when they're beat up as they are. Orlando beating the Pistons, I think that's a surprise. I don't think either one of us cares one way or the other with Cleveland and Toronto. But the biggest shocker of all might be that Knicks-Atlanta Hawks series. That one tied at 2-2. What's going on there?
Wait, you want me to start there? That's not a surprise. That was always going to be a tight series. Maybe not tied 2-2.
It's never going to be a tight series.
I didn't think the Knicks. I never thought the Knicks were going to be sweeping Atlanta. It's a 3-6 series, and they're playing as such, just like the other. So no, okay. Can I back up for a second? Can we talk about the real surprise? You're just trying to give me crap and get me worked up before I get started.
A little bit. Get the blood pressure rising. Yeah.
So the number one surprise, obviously, is Orlando being up 3-1. But it's not that much of a surprise. You and I weren't completely bought into Detroit from the get-go. If you were watching Orlando at the end of the season, and especially in that play-in game, you're seeing some things out of Orlando this entire series. What's taking me by surprise, so I was watching enough of Orlando at the end of the season to say, wow, these guys are just moved beautifully, especially on the offensive side of the floor. They're so in sync. The movement that they have is just beautiful to watch, and it's playing out in this entire series. What's taken me by surprise in this game 4, 20 steals. What they're doing on the defensive side of the floor against a team like Detroit, that's taking me by surprise. Have you been watching that series?
A little bit, but I will tell you, seeing how Detroit played against the Lakers and the way that Detroit played defense against the Lakers, I guess in that regard it is a surprise, right? Beating them with their own club, basically.
Yeah. The Lakers too. The Lakers are a pleasant surprise. You know me, I'm not a Laker basher. I love watching good basketball. But what's especially surprising is that they're down 2 of their best guys, and LeBron, like we discussed, has been elevating the games of some guys that were role players, bench players up until this point. Especially my Duke alumni, Luke Kennard. I love seeing him having some good games. LeBron looked a little tired in Game 4, so I'm glad he's getting an extra day's rest for Game 5. Game 5 is a really important game for them. Do you think that I hear there's the possibility that Reeves might be coming back for Game 5?
Austin Reeves might come back. I don't even know that they really should have him come back, to be honest with you. Why not give him another day's rest? This game, to me, is not a huge. I think the Lakers will do their best to close it out, but it's not the end of the world if they don't. They had 4 to lose. 4 to lose. All they had to do is win out of 4, right? And so
you'd love to see him win in LA, though. You'd love to see him win at home.
No question. And they got to take a little bit of a break because that was a blowout that last game. It allowed them to sit some guys and rest them. But they should close this thing out. I don't know if it'll be in Game 5 or if it winds up being in Game 6.
Not that I'm a genius when it comes to basketball and injuries and that sort of thing. I'd almost if they're bringing Reeves back prematurely, then let him rest. But if he's ready to come back, bring him back, because he's been out long enough where he's got to knock some of the rust off. That said, OKC is resting up, waiting for whoever comes out of that series.
But, don't bother, right?
Yeah. But all right, so we'll see. Address okay. So real quick, Nuggets being down to the T-Wolves is a surprise, but I just don't see I don't see how the T-Wolves are pulling this out without Edwards, without DiVincenzo. The other
I
two
don't know how
7
they're doing
series,
it.
not really big
Yeah.
surprises. The Celtics, Sixers, Spurs, Trailblazers. Spurs and Celtics are both up 3-1 in their series. Okay,
Yeah.
so Knicks-Hawks. So Knicks looked a lot better in Game 4. That's the kind of effort I want to see consistently for 48 minutes in Game 5, Game 6, because it's going at least 6. They're tied up 2-2 right now. But here's something I noticed. They were up 7 after the first quarter, 14 at half, 21 after the third quarter. Very consistent effort. A couple other things I noticed in Game 4 that I wasn't necessarily seeing in Games 2 and 3. Number one, whenever Cat is doing more complaining than playing, he's not having his game. We need to see the best of Cat, both in attitude as well as his play on both ends of the floor. The other thing that we saw is Mikal Bridges, offense decided to show up. He decided to hit some shots. Josh Hart too. I think they had a total of 2 points combined in Game 3. I might be wrong about that, but they were basically absent offensively. Now, both of those starters, they never take off defensively, so they at least have that. But if they're not hitting their shots, if they're not contributing on the offensive side of the floor, Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns are all-star players, but they're not Jordan level, Pippen level players. They can't make up for that gap. And as much as I like some of their bench, you got Grand Theft Alvarado, you got Deuce McBride, you got Mitchell Robinson playing his role. They're not making up for 2 out of the 5 starters that should be at least hitting 10, 12 points to contribute to the offense. So they had a much better Game 4. I'm hopeful that they won't disappoint going into Game 5 and 6.
It's a 3-game series now, so you got to win 2 out of 3.
It's going to be great for my blood pressure.
So it'll be
awesome for my blood pressure.
To see how that plays out. Well, let's move on.
One
Maybe
last
I don't
thing,
know.
one last thing to note: the
please.
Cavs-Raptors series. Whoever
Yes.
comes out of Detroit and Orlando, Cavs Raptors. No, they're not. I would love to see Orlando go to the East Final.
Would you?
I'd love it. I'd love it. I don't think the Cavs
I think
are good.
whoever
I'm thoroughly
I agree.
unimpressed
Whoever
with
comes-
the Cavs.
whoever comes out of that side is not going to be Boston, no matter how you slice it.
Yeah.
That's my thinking on that.
Yeah.
Maybe some more pleasant thoughts for you. Let's talk about the NFL draft. I think your Giants did okay in spite of what Malik Neighbor says. I think John Harbaugh knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
But overall in the draft, this isn't one of the most exciting draft classes that we've seen. Fernando Mendoza went first.
Yeah.
As expected. There were some surprises. Well, there was really only one big surprise.
There was a big surprise
and that
in round
involved,
one.
Yeah, that involved my Rams.
That's right.
Other than that, were you happy with how things played out, especially where the Giants were concerned?
Yeah, listen, I'm not going to pretend to be a genius when it comes to these draft classes, but in all of when I looked at tape on the guys that they ended up drafting and knowing a couple of these guys from having watched enough college football, I'm perfectly happy with it. Arvell Reese, their first pick at number 5, was arguably the best defensive player in this draft. I think number one, a lot of guys are forgetting that this kid is 20 years old, so we're not expecting him to be the next Lawrence Taylor, or however you're judging him. A lot of folks are also just slotting him in as an edge rusher. And if you listen to Harbaugh is saying, "Oh yeah, we'll line him up at for his slot, at the A gap or the B gap, the C." Yeah. He'll line him up all over, that anywhere on that that part of the field. Which I'm pretty happy. I'm excited to watch him play. And if you ever watched any of the games that he was a part of at Ohio State, I mean, he could take over a game. He was all you were watching when he was now their 10th pick, the second pick in the first round at number 10, CC Maui Nunga. I've been practicing that. CC Maui Nunga. I've been hearing, shout out to my friends, the Cohens, Luke Cohen, who goes to Miami, who watches these games very, very closely, says great things about this young man. Played every game at Miami. There is a little bit of concern about the back issue, but there was a signing that the Giants made that flew under the radar. It's a trainer from Miami. So if they had a lot of knowledge about this back issue from Maui Nunga, so I'm not too worried about that. But what I do know and what I've seen is this kid's athletic. They're going to move him to the right guard. He could come off the line, which is really good for a mobile quarterback like Jackson Dart. The only complaint, though, there was some skepticism. Caleb Downs was still sitting there at 10. And Caleb Downs is some analysts are saying he's the best football player in this year's draft. So that was one complaint about round one for us.
Except that if you're a team that needs a number of things, which I think the Giants need a few things at least, right? I don't think you can go wrong with getting a big mauler on the offensive line. You get a speed rusher who maybe, as you said, could move inside if he had to. So trenches, right? That's really important when you want to help out a young quarterback. Defense can do that as well as an offensive line. So that makes a lot of sense to me. The uproar, though, wasn't over the minor little picks that everybody made. It was just when the Rams decided to choose a quarterback, when everybody thought that they were one player maybe away from winning a Super Bowl, which I don't know how anybody could ever decide or dictate how that's going to happen. They chose to go with Ty Simpson with the number 13 pick. The Rams have a history of not giving a darn about. They have an old expression, F them picks, and the first round pick is one of them that they don't really care much for. And keep in mind, the Rams had 2 first round picks. Number 29, they traded for the defensive back McDuffie with the Kansas City Chiefs. So they look at that as their number 1 draft pick, the number 29th pick. And they got a player who is better than anybody coming out of the draft, right? Because you don't know how these guys are going to eventually play. So they felt like they had one to give away, and that was the number 13 pick. When are the Rams going to be drafting in the top 15?
So
I don't think anytime
interesting
soon.
Teams to watch in this year's draft were Kansas City and the Rams, because they are perpetual winners. They're not used to having high draft picks, certainly not in the first round. So they've developed a system of being able to construct teams outside of these premium draft picks. I love the Ty Simpson pick, and I wish that everybody could save tape for 3 to 5 years, especially 5 years, because I believe 5 years from now, Ty Simpson, especially under this coaching staff, is going to look like a brilliant. It's going to be one of those everybody was complaining about or surprised about or giving the Rams a lower score, lower grade on this year's draft than usual. But he's going to look brilliant because he's going to spend at least a year, if not 2 or 3, under this coaching staff and under this tutelage of Matthew Stafford. He couldn't be in a better spot.
Right. Not uncommon, by the way, for teams to draft the heir apparent early, and everybody gives them grief about it. The Packers did it when they had Brett Favre and they drafted Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
Then with Aaron Rodgers, they drafted Jordan Love. The 49ers did it when they had Joe Montana. They brought in Steve Young. You have to be ready to replace your guy, because if you're a good team, as they seem to be every year, you're not going to get a chance to draft that low. So
yeah, that's right.
This makes all the sense in the world. Now, what happened, though, was then it turned into this very gossipy, scandalous kind of a moment where there were folks that said during their draft press conference that Sean McVay looked like he was really upset. And people were trying to say, well, that he's upset with the choice that they had in terms of the Ty Simpson as a first-round pick instead of going after a receiver, which everybody thinks they need. Well, guess what? We've learned since that Simpson and McVay were having secretive meetings. So they had decided long ago it was going to be Ty Simpson, and they did everything they could to blow smoke. Yeah. So to try to distract everybody as to what they were going to do. So
that's next level.
The
man.
other
that's
well, and isn't that something? Yeah,
3-dimensional chess right there. That's awesome.
That's right. And on top of that, people were talking about, well, he's 6'1", he's just under 6'2". I was worried about that. I'm a quarterback guy. I love my team's quarterbacks. I look them up and down. I study them in and out. I was a quarterback in high school. I don't know if you know that. Al Bundy, basically.
I haven't read a lot of newspapers from the 1890s.
The leather helmet. I wore a leather helmet. And here's the thing. I was worried about the height thing, right? I thought, well, these strapping quarterbacks nowadays are 6'4", 6'5". I went down the list, Corey, and here's what I found.
How tall is Stafford? Stafford can't be.
So Stafford is 6'3", all right?
Okay.
So, and again, Simpson a shade under 6'2". Okay, Dak Prescott, 6'2".
Okay.
All right. Caleb Williams, 6'1". Bo Nix, 6'2". Baker Mayfield, 6'2". The average quarterback in the NFL today, 6'2". Patrick Mahomes, 6'2". Jackson Dart, 6'2".
There you go.
Brock Purdy, 6'1". So, listen, it's all about processing and how quickly you can do
Yeah.
it, and can you read a defense. Bryce Young, 5'10", and he had a good year with Carolina last year. So one thing I've learned about the Rams is when I get disgusted and I think, oh my God, what are they thinking? Then I realize they're geniuses. When they don't draft somebody and then all of a sudden you're like, who's this Puka Nakua?
Right.
Who's this Cooper Kupp? Right?
Oh.
They know what they're doing.
They ended up making a pick late round. I think it was sixth round. C.J. Daniels, he's another one that I watched
wide receiver.
games. Came out of Miami. Oh man, if you watch any of those Miami games, that kid
one-handed
stands
grabs.
out. Yeah.
Who does that remind you of? Those one-handed grabs.
OBJ.
See if you can. There you go. I mean, unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
All right. So that's it for the draft. I think that both the Rams and the Giants, I think, did a pretty good job overall in the draft for East versus West in that regard. So, yeah, and like you said, we're not going to know the answers to those questions for another 3 or 4 years on how that all panned out. Let's move on to baseball here, and
Let's not.
well, here's the thing: we're 1 month into the season. The Phillies just fired their manager, Rob Thompson.
Yeah, hired Donnie Baseball.
So
did you
Mattingly,
see?
who used to
they hired
to manage
Don
the Dodgers, right, as the interim, right?
Yeah.
So Philadelphia Phillies are sitting there at 9-19. They fired their manager.
That's terrible. That's an awful record. I can't believe they're 10 games under 500.
Do you know where I'm going with this?
Terribly. Those Philadelphia Phillies, I'll tell you.
You see where I'm going with this? The Mets are also sitting there at 9-19, and just when I thought after snapping a 12-game losing streak, they're hot again. They've lost 3 in a row.
They lost the team that lost almost 120 games last year. Do you see why I drink so much? Do you see why I need a therapist? Do you see why I'm doing acupuncture and say, I'm at the end. I can't do it. I just can't do it.
When are you going to fire your manager? That's what I'm trying to figure out, right?
Yesterday. We needed to do it yesterday. I'm usually not one. I don't have an itchy trigger finger with these kinds of things. Like, I mean, I forget if it was last week or the week before where I said, all right, give it till Memorial Day. No. You get swept by the team that lost 119 games, and you got an off day the next day, and you don't fire your stinking manager? Fire them all. Fire them all. I don't care. Bring back, I don't know, Tommy Tuberville because, this guy, the dumbest. Sorry. Well, I'm not getting into.
That's okay. Is Davey Johnston available? Is he?
No. He passed away, but he'd be better. He died this winter. He'd be better managing, and he's dead than what they have right now. Are you kidding me?
Okay.
I was gonna make a joke. I was gonna say, well, we're in first place, but I was gonna be talking about the Syracuse Mets, or the Binghamton Runnel Ponies, or the St. Lucie Mets, or the Brooklyn Cycle. But meanwhile, I look at the minor leagues. They're all, they all suck. They all stink. Not a single one. Not a single. I can't even watch the minor leagues right now. I'm dying.
So what you're saying is there's a chance.
Okay. All right, so let me just make a case here.
No, there's no case to make.
There's a case to make. Okay,
yeah.
So one of these teams, I don't know if it's going to be the Phillies. Of course, I'm rooting for it to be the Mets. But one of these two teams is going to have a hot month. I don't know if it's going to be May. I don't know if it's going to be June. But sometime in the next 60 days, one of these teams is going to go on a run. They're going to be back to at least close to 500, if not right above it. And then it's going to be, and by the way, the Braves are not – they're playing way ahead of their skis. They're playing way above their head right now. I'm not saying that they're not going to be 10 games over 500 at the end of the season, but I'm here to tell you they are not going to continue playing at 700 ball. The only teams that are for real are in your division. The Dodgers and the Padres are for real. They're going to be 650, 700 teams throughout the entire year. But in the East – as well as the AL teams that these guys got to play. The AL teams, you got the Yankees, and you got a lot of mediocrity. So everybody else that they're going to be playing is, one of these two teams, if not both of them, are going to have go on quite a run in the next month or two. And they're going to be, we're going to forget about April.
Sure.
I'm going to have done enough drinking so that I have a little amnesia. I'm going to do some.
Here's the concern. Here's the concern I have for you. You have to hope that the hot streak doesn't come in November.
Right. They go on a run of firing everybody from David Stearns on down.
That's what you have to hope. Do you feel better?
Whether they
Do you feel
go on
better?
a run or I have the runs, one way or the other, there's going to be a run
Oh,
somewhere.
geez. There you go. All right. Anything? Do you feel better? Anything else you want to add
No,
to
I don't
that?
feel
You want to
better.
wrap up?
I
Okay.
don't feel better.
Remember that optimism we talked about before the season started, and how the New York media just praises them up and down, and then here we are. I think I warned you this might happen. No, listen. They may go on a little run. I agree with you there. But the
Because
question
these bats,
is,
look, okay. So
I agree, but
they
here's
still have-
the thing. Here's the thing.
Yeah.
Timing is everything, right? Timing is everything, and I agree with you. There's a point where you have to say, okay, we're going to go on that run with this team, with this manager, but then there's a point where you got to cut your losses before it's too late, right?
So I honestly wouldn't
yeah.
mind that if we don't
Okay.
go on our run in May or June, then I embrace because we have pieces to sell. We have a couple of
Okay.
at least a couple of starting pitchers to sell off. We have a couple guys we signed this winter we could sell off. Luis Robert.
Yeah.
I'd rather see the kid that that we talked about with Gary Apple, the kid that they just promoted from AA to AAA. By then, he'll stole 70 bases last year, true center fielder. So I wouldn't mind. He'll have enough games at AAA by then in a couple of months.
That
know?
wonderful optimism. Uh-oh, you hear
There's
that?
your pooch. There's your pooch. He has something to say. How's Bentley doing?
Stop. Bentley. Should we stop record? Hang on. 1 second. Stop.
No, we're keeping this.
Okay.
We're absolutely keeping this.
Let's do this. How about, you ready to pop that culture?
Let's pop that
Let's
culture.
do it. Let's do it.
Pop that culture.
Great story. Have you know about these Savannah Bananas, right?
Of course
This
I
minor
do.
league baseball team that does all these wonderful tricks. They had 40,000 people at Yankee Stadium recently.
I didn't realize they
40,000
get
people
that.
at Yankee
Yeah.
Stadium. It's ridiculous. It's true entertainment. These guys, you can tell they can play baseball, but that they also, they're tricksters. They do flips and they do. So it's a lot of fun. Russell Wilson, you remember him, don't you?
Yeah, vaguely.
The Giants quarterback. Now, he
Yeah.
used to play baseball. He was a dual sport athlete in college. And so he went out to play a game with the Bananas, stepped up to the plate, hit a ground ball, wound up being out at first base. But he did that in front of 40,000 people with this trick baseball team. It's a promotional baseball team. And everybody's joining in on watching how this team plays. Part of my question to you is that in the case of Russell Wilson, is it time for him to hang it up? What did he have, like 46,000 career passing yards? He won a Super Bowl. Some people say, well, that's because he was playing for Pete Carroll and those guys. But, I always thought there was a lot of talent there. It just didn't work out in New York, but that's happened for a lot of quarterbacks, right? Until recent history.
yeah.
Go ahead. Should he hang it up?
He was really good for really long. It wasn't just Seattle. He actually, his second season in Denver, he had a decent season. It wasn't one of his best seasons, but still thrown over 3,000 yards and 26 touchdowns to only 8 interceptions. That's a decent season at the end of the season. So that was only two years ago. His last couple of years between Pittsburgh and New York, it might indicate that it's time to hang it up. You'd always rather see a guy leave before, you were talking about Muhammad Ali last week, man.
Yeah.
It's sad to see, these guys who've had their days of glory, just not be able to pull off what they used to. So I think, I think it's probably, especially at, if he has a next chapter, he's not even 40 years old. So, I'd rather see him hanging up a little bit, it's not. You can't even say it's too soon because those last couple of years just have not been good.
Have not, and better to leave, too early than too late. And I think that some people get, like when you see, Flacco still slinging it, and Phillip Rivers come out of retirement. I think these quarterbacks feel like they can hang around even longer than they used to. But I'm with you. Once it shows, it shows. And then what? But does he go play for the Savannah Bananas and become like Will Chamberlain did he was with the Globetrotters for a little while. And these guys, they just don't want to say goodbye sometimes. I agree with you. But I could see quarterbacks are different. They're so protected now.
Yeah.
That a guy like Russell Wilson in a pinch could probably come out of retirement, or let's just say he doesn't retire and he's just sitting out there in his living room while the NFL season is playing, that's the guy you could possibly plug and play, as a last resort for a couple of games.
I'd rather see somebody, make a run for Tom Brady, 3 years out of retirement. I think he has a better shot. He certainly has the best chin dimple out of the entire NFL. So.
Brady? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. I think that's it. I think we're out of time. Time to say goodbye, Corey.
I think I'm out of breath. Are you kidding me? Yeah.
I know, you poor guy. I'm Rick Garcia. He's Corey Nathan. It's East meets West. Take some medicine, would you? Take some medication, please.
Duly noted. And don't forget to follow us, rate us, review us. Write that review, by the way. It really does help us in the rankings. And tell a friend about us. Let everyone know you can find us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever you get your favorite podcast. Thanks for being my therapist today, Rick.
My pleasure. See you next time.
Baby got